I still remember his laugh, not the kind you share after a funny story or a clever joke. No, this laugh was different. Cold. Sharp. Dismissive. I was in the break room, pouring myself a cup of stale coffee, when Bobby walked in. The new acting CEO. The founder's only son. He strolled in like he owned the place, and technically now he did. He didn't say hello, didn't introduce himself. Just leaned against the counter, arms crossed, eyes scanning the room like we were all part of an auction. "You're Christina, right?" he asked, his tone flat, like he was already bored. I turned around, giving him a polite smile.
"Yes. Nice to meet you, Bobby."
"Welcome aboard." He smirked, not looking at me. "Come to my office in 10 minutes. Bring your laptop." It wasn't a question. The moment he said it, I felt a chill crawl up my spine. After 12 years at Thompson Industries, you learn to sense when something's off. And something about the way he spoke, so cold, so distant, tied my stomach in a knot. 10 minutes later, I walked into his office. He didn't even offer me a seat. Just sat there tapping his pen on the desk like it was some kind of drum roll. "We're streamlining," he said, like he was talking about a new lunch menu. "New leadership. New direction. We need lean, agile teams. You're not essential." Then he laughed. That same mocking laugh. Like this was all just a game to him. For a second, everything blurred. Not essential. I had built the client relations department from the ground up. Brought in major accounts when we were barely surviving. Worked through 4 mergers, 3 restructurings, and more late nights than I could count. And now I was being cut loose in a 10-minute meeting. I wanted to fight back. Wanted to shout. But instead, I smiled.
"Calm.
Steady. Good luck, Bobby," I said. And I meant it, just not the way he thought. I packed up my things quietly. Around me, coworkers peeked from behind their cubicle walls, whispering but saying nothing. I didn't blame them. In places like this, survival depends on staying invisible. As I walked to my car, a cardboard box in my arms, memories flooded me. Missed birthdays. Skipped anniversaries. Even my divorce hearing because the company needed me. And now all of that had been reduced to a few clipped words and a cruel laugh. But strangely, I didn't feel angry. Not yet. I felt something else. A quiet certainty. Because Bobby had just made a mistake, he couldn't undo it. What he didn't know, what he hadn't even bothered to find out, was that I wasn't just another manager. I was the key connection to our biggest investor, Crestmont Ventures. We were just weeks away from closing a multi-million-dollar deal. A deal built entirely on the trust one had earned over years of careful negotiation. And in that agreement, thanks to a tense midnight call with Crestmont's lead counsel, I had insisted on one clause. Any major personnel changes would require renegotiation or could cancel the deal altogether. With one arrogant decision and a thoughtless laugh, Bobby had triggered that clause. He just didn't know it yet. Sitting in my car, the city lights blurred through the windshield. My phone buzzed. It was Rachel, a junior associate I had mentored for years. "Christina, is it true?" she whispered. "It's true," I said simply. "I'm out." Silence. Then a shaky voice. "You were the only reason Crestmont trusted us." "I know." Another pause. Longer this time. "What's going to happen now?" I looked out into the still night. "I guess," I said slowly, "they're about to find out what happens when you remove the wrong piece from the foundation." Rachel didn't say anything.
She didn't need to.
As I ended the call, a strange feeling washed over me. Not sadness. Not even anger. Something more like quiet relief. It was over. At least for me. But for Bobby? His first day wasn't going to be remembered for bold leadership or a new vision. It was going to be remembered for what he broke, and what came crashing down right after. When the board started demanding answers, that's when Bobby would finally realize just how important I had been. I didn't sleep much that night, but I didn't toss and turn either. I just lay there, staring up at the ceiling, feeling that strange tension in the air, the kind you feel right before a storm hits. By 8 a.m., I was sitting at my kitchen table, a cup of coffee going cold in front of me, mindlessly scrolling through news alerts on my phone. Still nothing. No signs of trouble. Maybe, I thought, They'll find a way to fix it before it explodes. But deep down, I knew better. At 9:20 a.m., my phone buzzed. A message from Rachel. They're panicking. Investors are supposed to call at 10. Bobby's been in the conference room with legal since 8:40. I smiled. Just a small one. The first real satisfaction I'd felt since he fired me. I could picture it clearly. Bobby pacing in the glass conference room, trying to fake confidence, while the legal team flipped through contracts. And then they'd find it. That clause I had insisted on. And realized the damage had already been done. I took a sip of my cold coffee. The day was just beginning. At 9:50 a.m., another message came through. This time from Walter, an old friend in the finance department. Christina, they're losing it. Board members are calling in already. They heard about what happened yesterday. They're asking how it affects the Crestmont deal. I leaned back in my chair. Things were moving even faster than I expected. See, Crestmont Ventures wasn't just any investor. They were the investor. The kind of partner whose name alone could open doors. Bobby hadn't just put a deal at risk. He had shaken their trust. And once trust is gone, it's hard to get back. By 10:18 a.m., the real fallout began. Rachel messaged again. Investors are on the call. Bobby's stammering. Mr. Thompson just walked in. That made me sit up straight. Mr. Thompson, Bobby's father, had been semi-retired, traveling to international offices, staying out of daily business. He wasn't supposed to be there. The fact that he was told me everything I needed to know. At 10:35 a.m., the final message came in. You're not going to believe this. Mr. Thompson screamed at Bobby. What did you do? That was our key to the deal. The entire office heard it. I let out a slow breath. A mix of sadness and quiet satisfaction settled over me. Because it wasn't just about a deal. It was about everything I had built over the last decade. The trust, the relationships, and the solid ground that Thompson Industries stood on. And Bobby had kicked it all aside without even asking who had laid the foundation. At 10:40 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won. Christina, it's Mr. Thompson. His voice was tight, strained, like a man barely holding things together. I need to speak with you, he said. Today. Please. I paused. Let the silence stretch. About what? I asked, keeping my voice calm. The Crestmont Ventures deal. He replied immediately. They're reconsidering. They said the termination of key personnel violated the preliminary agreement. They want to meet with you. Only you. They won't speak to anyone else. Another long pause. Then he added softer. Please, Christina. We didn't realize. I cut in gently. You didn't ask. He let out a heavy breath. You're right. And Bobby, he didn't understand. I thought he was ready. I didn't respond. There wasn't anything left to say. I'll come in, I said at last. On one condition. Anything, he replied without hesitation. I deal directly with you, not Bobby. Another beat of silence. Agreed. I ended the call and placed my phone down slowly, my hand steady. What I felt wasn't anger. It wasn't even victory. It was something quieter, deeper, a kind of clarity. For the first time in years, I wasn't trying to prove my worth or earn anyone's approval. I was standing fully in the value I knew I brought, and finally, they were seeing it too. If they wanted me back, even temporarily, they'd have to meet me on my terms. As I got dressed, pulling on a clean, sharp suit, I paused for a moment and caught my reflection in the mirror. There were new lines near my eyes now, and strands of silver threading through my hair. But I didn't see weakness. I saw proof. Proof of every quiet battle I had fought behind the scenes while others stood in the spotlight and took credit. Today would be different. Today, I wasn't fighting for a seat at the table. Today, I was at the table. And Bobby, arrogant, clueless Bobby, was about to learn what it meant to lose someone who had been essential all along. The lobby was almost too bright when I walked in, sunlight bouncing off polished marble floors. It felt strange to be back, not as an employee, but as something else. Something stronger. The receptionist looked up, startled, then straightened quickly. Miss Wilson, Christina, Mr. Thompson is expecting you. 12th floor. I gave a small nod and stepped into the elevator. As the doors closed, I caught a glimpse of myself in the metal walls, composed, sharp, unreadable. Exactly how I needed to be today. When I stepped out onto the executive floor, the energy shifted immediately. Conversations hushed. Heads turned. Everyone already knew something had happened, and they knew why I was here. Bobby was standing near the glass conference room, arms crossed, pretending to laugh at something a junior exec had said. But when he saw me, his face went pale. He covered it with a smirk. "Well, look who's back," he said, loud enough for half the office to hear. "Couldn't stay away, huh?" I didn't stop. Didn't answer. Didn't even look at him. I just walked past, heels clicking softly in the silence. Let him squirm. Let him speak. His words couldn't touch me anymore. Mr. Thompson was waiting outside his office. He looked older than I remembered, tired in a way no suit could hide. "Christina," he said quietly, offering his hand. I shook it, firm, but not warm. Some things needed saying.
But not yet.
Right now, we had a deal to save. Inside, his office overlooked the city, like a painting. He gestured for me to sit. "I'm sorry for how this was handled," he began, his voice low. "You didn't deserve it." I let the silence hang for a moment, then gave a single nod. Acknowledgement, not forgiveness. He cleared his throat and slid a thick file across the desk. "The Crestmont team is waiting for a call. They're ready to pull out, unless you're involved directly. I bought us a few hours." I opened the file. It was chaos, rushed notes, panicked emails, last-minute edits. A mess of fear and desperation. Amateur hour. I closed the file calmly.
"I'll talk to them," I said.
But first, I want it in writing. He didn't hesitate. He already had the letter printed, official documentation giving me full authority over the Crestmont deal, with no interference. Especially not from Bobby. I read it carefully, signed it, and finally let out a quiet breath. A shift, small but sure. I was back, but not as before. "Let's get started," I said. He nodded and reached for the speakerphone. But before he could dial, a loud knock broke the moment, and Bobby barged in, uninvited. "This is ridiculous," he snapped, eyes on me. "You're going to let her." "Enough." Mr. Thompson's voice cracked through the room like a whip. Bobby froze. "I trusted you," his father said, voice shaking, not from anger, but disappointment. "I trusted you to lead, to respect the people who built this company. And instead, you treated it like a toy you didn't understand." Bobby opened his mouth to protest, but Mr. Thompson cut him off again. "You fired the one person holding together our most important partnership. You didn't even read the personnel clauses. You risked the future of this company. For what? Your ego?" The air in the room tightened. I stayed silent, letting Mr. Thompson finish what he started. "You're suspended from all decision-making, effective immediately," he said. "Legal is preparing the paperwork now." Bobby didn't speak. He couldn't. And for the first time, I saw it dawn on him. The cost of arrogance, the weight of what he'd lost. "If the Crestmont deal falls through because of you," Mr. Thompson said sharply, "the board will vote on your removal." Bobby's face turned a deep, blotchy red. For the first time, he looked truly shaken. Like the truth of what he'd done was finally cracking through the walls of privilege and ego he'd been hiding behind his whole life. "This isn't over," he hissed at me as he stormed out. I didn't respond. He wasn't worth the breath. When the door slammed behind him, the tension broke. Mr. Thompson sank into his chair like the weight of the last 32 hours had finally caught up to him. "I should have seen it coming," he muttered, rubbing his forehead. I looked at him evenly. "Blind faith is dangerous," I said softly, "especially when it keeps you from seeing the truth." He nodded, slowly, heavily, then reached for the phone. He punched in the number for Crestmont Ventures. As the line rang, I straightened my shoulders. I wasn't doing this for the company. Not for him. I was doing it for me. Because sometimes, the strongest move isn't slamming the door on your way out. It's walking back in, taller, steadier, and setting the terms yourself. The speakerphone clicked. The room fell quiet. On the other end, I could hear soft background noise, papers shuffling, keyboards tapping, voices lowered in caution. Then came the voice of Henry Lewis, lead partner at Crestmont Ventures.
"Christina," he said.
Not angry. Worse, cold. "We were surprised to hear about your departure." I glanced at Mr. Thompson, who now sat stiff and silent, fists clenched on top of his desk. "My departure," I said clearly, "was not voluntary. And it wasn't part of any strategy. You can trust that." There was a pause. I could almost feel them weighing my words, deciding whether I still held the credibility they'd built their trust on. Henry's voice returned, sharp. "We were under the impression that you were an essential part of this deal. Most of our confidence came from your direct involvement." "You were right," I said simply. "And I take that responsibility seriously." Another pause. Heavy. Waiting. I leaned in slightly, keeping my voice calm and strong. This deal wasn't built on spreadsheets and promises. It was built on relationships, on 3 years of consistency, transparency, and mutual respect. I'm here now to make sure that foundation holds. A long breath came through the speaker. Henry was still thinking. Then he asked the question I'd known was coming. "If leadership at Thompson is unstable, how can we trust your company to protect our investment?" It was a hard question. A fair one. I didn't flinch. "Leadership isn't just about titles," I said. "It's about accountability. About showing up when it matters." I'm still here. Still standing by everything we agreed to. One person's mistake, someone no longer involved, doesn't erase what we've built. If anything, it proves why it's so important to trust the right people, not just the ones with a corner office. Silence again. Mr. Thompson sat frozen, barely breathing. Finally, Henry spoke. His tone had softened slightly. "We appreciate your honesty, Christina." Before I could respond, another voice joined the call. One I hadn't expected, Marilyn Bailey, Crestmont's chief legal advisor. "I've reviewed the personnel clauses in the preliminary agreement," she said, her voice cool and direct. "We are under contract, well within our rights to walk away. No penalty." "I understand," I replied evenly. There was a short pause. "But," she continued, "we also recognize that mistakes happen. If Christina remains the primary liaison moving forward, with full contractual authority, we are willing to continue. On one condition." I raised an eyebrow, though they couldn't see it. "What condition?" I asked. "That Thompson Industries issues a formal acknowledgement of the error," she said, "and recommits to the leadership continuity clause in writing." I didn't look at Mr. Thompson. I didn't need to. This was the cost of lost trust, and the first step toward earning it back. "You'll have it by the end of the day," I said. Henry cleared his throat. "In that case, we're willing to continue." The tension broke. Mr. Thompson slumped back, relief clear on his face. "Thank you, Christina," Henry added. "We trusted you, and you reminded us why." The call ended. I barely heard the goodbyes. My focus was on the steady beat of adrenaline in my chest. I had held the line. I didn't flinch. "You saved us," Mr. Thompson said, voice low. "I didn't do it for you," I replied. "I did it for the people this company forgot." He nodded slowly, regret flickering in his eyes. "You deserve better." "I know," I said. As I reached the door, he spoke again. "Stay. Not just to fix this. To lead." I paused. "I'll think about it. But if I come back, it's on my terms. No more silent work. No more being overlooked. If they want me to rebuild what Bobby ruined, they'll have to respect the difference between earned power and inherited power." Later that day, the new deal was signed. Crestmont Ventures agreed to stay. A memo went out. Christina Wilson will serve as interim head of client relations. It looked like a win, but in a place like Thompson, wins aren't endings. They're beginnings. An hour later, HR emailed. A routine meeting about leadership roles. Too perfect. Too fast. Bobby was down, but not gone. That night, walking the empty halls, I passed the break room. "She won't last," someone whispered. "Bobby still has people." "She's a problem now," another voice muttered. "Too much attention." I walked away. No need to argue. I understood what this really was. Bobby started a rot, and cutting him out wasn't enough. The game wasn't over. It had just changed. And now I had a choice: walk away or finish what I started. I had just saved a multi-million-dollar deal under intense pressure. But now I faced a choice: walk away or stay and fight. Staying meant more than just signing forms or fixing spreadsheets. It meant digging deep, pulling out the rot that had been growing from within. It meant long nights, hard conversations, and discovering enemies hiding behind friendly faces. To rebuild, I had to become more than a manager with a title. I had to lead in truth, with strength. Was I ready? Not fully. But I knew one thing for sure. If I stayed, I couldn't stay quiet anymore. Silence would no longer protect me. And being nice to people who smiled at me while hiding knives behind their backs? That strategy was over. I would survive by being the person they feared most, a woman who knew her value, who didn't flinch, and who kept receipts. That night, as the city slept and the streetlights flickered, I opened my notebook. I wrote down everything. Every whisper I'd overheard. Every delay that didn't make sense. Every suspicious change to files and meetings. I was building a paper trail, evidence that exposed what was happening behind closed doors. Because if Bobby or anyone on his side thought they could quietly push me out with lies and rumors, they were wrong. They had underestimated me. Again. And this time I was ready. The game had changed. I wasn't walking into traps anymore. I was setting them. The next morning, I walked into the HR meeting 20 minutes early. The conference room was cold and quiet, lit by harsh fluorescent lights that made the air feel sharper. I took a seat at the far end of the table, notebook in hand, face calm. If this was their ambush, they were about to find out I hadn't come unprepared. 3 HR representatives walked in, all stiff politeness. And right behind them, unsurprisingly, came Bobby. He wasn't supposed to be there, but clearly, he thought he could still play his game. That smug smile on his face didn't last long. Christina, one of the HR reps, opened a folder and began. "We're here to talk about some concerns raised regarding your recent behavior." I tilted my head, pretending to be curious. "Concerns?" I echoed. Emma, the second rep, and someone I'd worked with for years, looked uncomfortable. She avoided my eyes.
She didn't have to say anything.
I already knew what this was. Bobby leaned in, his voice sticky sweet. "There have been questions about your ability to handle high-pressure relationships. Some feel your recent actions, while successful short-term, could suggest instability." "Instability," Emma repeated softly, finishing his sentence. There it was, the classic tactic. Plant a seed of doubt, poison someone's reputation just enough to make them look untrustworthy, without offering any real proof. I gave a small smile, just enough to make Bobby's expression shift. Calmly, I opened my notebook and flipped to a section I had filled the night before. "Before we go any further," I said clearly, "I'd like to submit documentation for the record." Both HR reps paused. Bobby froze. I slid the pages across the table. Detailed notes of every questionable action I'd witnessed in the past week. Delays in email chains. Files mysteriously edited or removed. Gossip seeded through specific departments. Names.
Dates.
Witnesses. "I've also reported suspected IT security breaches," I added. "These are the confirmation emails from the systems department. As of last night, an internal audit has been launched at the CEO's request." Emma looked stunned. "You reported this already?" she asked, eyes darting toward Bobby. "Of course," I said smoothly. "Weeks ago, when the first signs appeared. I take my role seriously." The room went quiet. Bobby opened his mouth, but no words came. He had no defense. He had played his hand too soon. And I had been ready for him. I leaned back slightly, watching realization spread across his face. He wasn't just exposed to me anymore, he was exposed to HR, the systems team, and soon the board. He had underestimated me every step of the way. Now, there was nowhere left to hide. Moments later, Mr. Thompson walked into the room, responding to a silent, urgent text from Emma. Bobby's smile was gone. And I was just getting started. When Mr. Thompson walked into the room and saw the documents on the table and the look on Bobby's face, he didn't need anyone to explain what was happening. "I think this meeting is over," he said, his voice cold and calm. Bobby turned to him, desperate. "Dad, listen. It's not what it looks like. She's just—" "You," Mr. Thompson interrupted, "are done." There was no yelling, no drama, just a clear, final sentence that ended everything. That afternoon, HR escorted Bobby out of the building. No farewell emails, no farewell party, no golden exit, just silence. And me? I stayed. Not because I had anything left to prove. I stayed because real leadership isn't about surviving the storm. It's about standing firm when the storm is over and others have already run. It's about rebuilding, even when the damage runs deep. In the days that followed, something unexpected happened. The office changed. People looked me in the eye again. Departments started working together instead of guarding information like weapons. Slowly, trust returned. And for the first time in a long while, there was a feeling we hadn't had in ages. Hope. On Friday morning, Mr. Thompson called me into his office. There was no grand announcement, no clapping, no celebration. Just a quiet moment. He slid a single envelope across his desk. "Chief Operating Officer," it read. "Effective immediately." I looked up. He gave a small nod. "You earned it," he said. I folded the letter, tucked it into my bag, and stood. No tears. No speech. Just quiet pride. I had fought hard for this, and I had won. That evening, as I walked out of the office and into the city, the skyline shimmered with possibilities. I knew there would be more battles ahead, more storms to come. But I also knew something I hadn't fully understood before. Strength isn't in how loudly you speak. It's in how quietly you stand your ground. And no one, not even a boss's entitled son, would ever take that strength from me again.